emailed me late last night, wanting to know why Lab 6's link didn't work.
Bruh.
Yeah. All right. So if you go to the content page for this week, there's a whole bunch of things I told you about briefly in the last video, but we're gonna talk about them briefly again. Exam 3 is this week. Don't get confused. It's not open for 2 weeks. It's just open for a week. And then the project's 2 weeks, right?
Mhm.
Just reminding you because dates seem to be a foreign concept this semester to students. We read the read file, but basically it wouldn't hurt you to go read it again, especially if your files are not working, just to remind yourself what's going on. We did the lecture. If you need to go back and look at some commands and stuff, the slides are a great place to start. And now we're going to start with the Word document. I'm going to walk you through the first part of it. But the resources tab has all the files you've got to download. So the first thing we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how I would set it up. You can set it up any way you want to. So that being said, Word document requirements and all we went over already. So let's start at part 1. I need to reformat that where it's on the next page. We're going to add functionality. Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. We should have had a part 0 in this one. But the getting started section is really what I want to talk about. I'm going to show you how to download files because the very first thing I tell you to do is open a file and start using it. Right? Because y'all all read this. Yeah. All right. So we're going to download and create the create negative image.py file, which should be in that resource folder. So go over here. I'm going to go to the resource folder. And there's a whole bunch of files here. Right? So what I would do if I was you is I'd come over here to my desktop and I go new folder. And I don't know why I didn't let me name it, but it's being weird today. There. I'm gonna name it project 2, just because I'm clever like that. And then I'm going to take all of these files and I'm going to download them. And you can download them all by using the download button. Or you can click on them one at a time and download them, whichever is easiest for you. I'm going to hit the download button. And I'm going to give Google a second, Coursera a second. It's going to automatically put them in my downloads folder. And if you're using Chrome, this little arrow symbol up here that's new to some of the recent updates is where you can get your downloads quickly, or you can go to File Downloads. If I downloaded them all at once, it went in as a zip file. So if I open it, it has a pink tab at the top that says extract. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to extract them all. I'm going to browse to the desktop and find project 2. Everybody following me? If not, this video will exist for you all. And I'm going to select that as my folder. And then I'm going to extract. And now the folder I just created called project 2 has the contents and the resources for project 2, right? Don't worry about the second part. It's just a graphic. We want the content file. And because we want to make life easier, we're just going to take all 3 of these and drag them back into project 2. So now all the files are there. I'm gonna grab go back into content. Images is still zipped, so I'm gonna extract it. Same way. I'm just gonna put it back in project 2. So, get rid of that. Get rid of that. So ultimately, you want to have all of these files looking just like this in your folder. You don't want any extra folders. You don't want any files that have a little zipper on them. You want them to all look just like this. That makes sense? And like I said, you can always go back and look at this video and follow the steps again to get this created. The reason you want them to look like this is because if you don't, you have to know which folder they're in, and you have to add that to the name when you're calling them. And when your user is calling, telling you which picture they want to use, they have to know the path name. It just gets really, really tiresome. When I test it, I have to go in and figure out where they're supposed to be, because you're not going to submit anything to me except the .py file like you've been doing. I have all the pictures. I don't need you to send me a zip folder with all the pictures and stuff in it, right? I just need the .py file. All right. So now I've done that. I can close all these extra windows. And I'm going to go back to my Word document with my directions on it. I'm going to open this, create negative image.py file. It says Moodle, but it should say Courstan. I missed one. Moodle's what you use after this class. We're going to rename it to our standard naming skills, you know, your name, project 2. So back to my folder. Nope. Desktop, project 2. I'm gonna find this one. I'm gonna right click on it, edit it with idle, open it up. I'm gonna go file, save as, and I'm gonna change it to right. So now when I go into my folder, I have renamed it. The create negative image one is still there because I did file save as. By doing that, I saved a copy of it instead of saving over it, which could be a good thing if you mess up and you want to start back over. However, if you do just change the name of it and you didn't save a copy of it, you can always go back and re-download the starting file if you need to. Hopefully you won't need to. All right. So I've done that. We're going to put in the print statement that tells me who you are. For those of you that, you know, ask me, why do I put this print statement in there? You have our file name on there. Oh, it helped me catch cheaters this time. You know, I hope you all know your own name. It's, you know, it is what it is. All right, so let's look at this code. Make it bigger where you all in the back can see it. So this is using CImage as image, which basically means that it's a module that was built off of the basic module. So CImage is slightly better or slightly different than the original image one. You downloaded CImage into that folder where you'll be able to run it. Does that make sense? I'll help you get on it. So this is code that's already been written. It has a function that's called load and process image. This is the one that goes and gets the file, loads it up, and lets us do stuff with it. We're going to make some changes in here as we go, but it gives you a starting point. And then you have one called create negative image. that takes the image that was created in load and process. And then you have a main function down here, which you're going to put a print statement in. So you need a print statement. I put some extra stuff in there. All right. So if I run this, it should actually run. And look at there. If you watch it run and you're paying attention, you actually see it load the original and then swap it over. Right, did it really quickly. So, giving you your first two functions to start with. Yes. And then from here, we're going to start modifying and adding to this code. Now, the first thing I think we should do is make sure that you understand what happened in this code. I'm going to read through the code with you. Right? So I'm going to start up here with load and process image. So load and process image takes a file name. So we're going to give this function a file name. It's going to go find that file or use that file to create an image object using image.image, right? Just like Turtle created a turtle object or instance using turtle.turtle. We're going to give it a window to draw it in. And I didn't put any sizes in this window. You know, the example in class on Monday had sizes. So you get the default window size. So that's the reason the picture was tiny and the window was bigger. Because you got the default, the default window. You can come back later and fix this to where it'll be exactly the size of your picture. But that's like part 3, I think. In part 2, I'm sorry, it's in part 2. And then we called negative image equals create negative image dot draw, because we want to see what happened after it ran. Yeah. So just like before in bus and when we drew project 1, we have a function that's going to call other functions. And then that function is going to be called in our main. Why? To show you how to call functions inside of functions. All right, create negative image is what we actually did. First thing it does is creates a new blank image that is the same width and height as the image that's passed in. Why? Because we need someplace to create our new image. Why are we not doing it on top of the image we already have? Because we don't want to override our original image. Could you override the original image? Yes. But you probably shouldn't until you're very confident that all your stuff works. Because if you do override it permanently, you can't get it back. So we got our new image to work with. We're going to set up our columns for loop. Then we're going to set up our row for loop. And that means that we're going to go across the picture one column at a time. Could you flip those and do one row at a time? Absolutely. There's no right or wrong on this. It's just whichever one you prefer in your head. If I had written this code, it probably would be row first because that's how my brain logically processes. The column first works for you. Does the same thing. One is not better than the other. It still has to touch every pixel, so it's still the same speed. choose your poison on which one makes you the most satisfied when writing code. So after we get into our nested loops, pay attention to your indents. If the two 4s line up with each other, they're not nested. You're going to get an error message because the first 4 doesn't have a body. So you have to indent for the 4. And you have to indent again for the body to be in the nested portion. So pay attention to your indentations. Very important. We need a new pixel, or we need a placeholder for the pixel. We're going to create a variable called pixel. We're doing it inside the loop. You know, last time I told you to create your variables like the guessing game before the loop starts. In this case, since we want to clear out the pixel every time, we want to do a different pixel every iteration through the loop, we're going to go ahead and just declare it in here. You don't have to do it before the loops because you're going to clear it every time. So pixel equals the pixel, the image dot get pixel at row, at column and row, right? So column and row will change every time one of the loops changes. You people are nodding along with me, so I'm gonna keep going. If you need to ask questions, this would be an excellent day to ask questions about this before I turn you loose to write code on your own. All right. 3 more variables that we're going to create. We talked about this a little bit in class. I want to show you the example of negate. The negative of a color is the total or the highest number of the color minus the current value of the color. The 255 minus get red is the new red. 255 minus get green is the new green, etc. Now, this is a place where a lot of people copy and paste because you're repeating the same line, but just changing red, green, and blue. Perfectly acceptable. Just be sure that you change the red, green, and blue properly. I wrote this one time and mixed up my greens and blues, and you don't get exactly what you think you're getting at that point. It changes things. Also, if you do that, if the function is called correctly for get red or get green or get blue, the computer's not going to catch that as a syntax error. So you're going to be looking at it going, it looks perfectly fine. It's completely right. It is. It's just not doing what you thought it was doing. So I will probably fix a lot of logic errors where you guys go, oh, I can't believe I missed that. Don't get frustrated and don't. It's going to happen. The bigger your program gets, the more of that is going to happen. All right. After I've got my new green, my new blue, and my new red, I'm going to create a new pixel variable, and then I'm going to call the function inside an image that makes a pixel, completely brand new pixel. And then when I do that, I have to pass in a red, green, and blue value. This is where those variables come in handy. Once I create that new pixel, I'm going to go to my new image that I created at the very beginning of this function. And I'm going to add that pixel to the image at column, row, and give it the pixel. And then the very, very, very last thing I'm going to do after I'm finished with this is return back to my program. Questions, comments, general concerns. Anybody completely lost and want me to start over? Okay, I'm okay. Where would you like me to start?
It's just trying to get the file to work. I mean, I'm just trying to get everything out of it.
I don't have an extract button and I'm confused. Oh, Mac users I will help. Thank you, Tracy. All right, you should, yeah, I wish I'd pointed that out earlier. If you're using a Mac, I forget you don't have exactly the same buttons I do. I will help you. If not, if we can't figure out how to get it extracted on your Mac, I will email you the files in a non-zipped form. All right, so you're an easy fix in a minute. You two in the center. What, a little louder. Brain's not processing what I'm saying. You think it would help if we wrote a little code, or do you want me to just keep talking? What will help? A little bit of both. Okay. Be honest. You with the double hands up. What are we at? The file didn't work. Oh, you didn't keep up with the file structure. Okay. So I'm gonna pull the file structure back up. You should have a file somewhere. I put it on the desktop because I'm lazy and don't want to go looking for it. You should create a folder called Project 2. And after you have downloaded all of my files and extracted them, they should all be in this folder. You can extract them in the downloads, just move them to a folder. So this Pi cache is created after we ran it. You don't have to have that when you get started. Pi, the idle will create that for you. So by doing this, it went to my project is going to automatically know to look in the folder it's in for CImage and for the Infinity War picture. Right? If you don't have everything in this folder, that's fine too. You just have to remember to tell the computer where it's going to be at. I'm just trying to save you some typing and some frustration with having to remember folder names. Some people like to be a little bit more organized and they want a folder in here called images, and they want to put all the images in that folder. So when they type it in their code, then they put images / Infinity War.gif. So it's just one more step. All right. Colby, does that help? It should. You just download that? Yes, I downloaded it from the content page and then extracted it. You can download them one at a time, or you can hit the download button and put it all in. I have another connection. You're in Windows. So once you do that, when you pull it up after you download it, there'll be a pink extract tab at the top of your folder. Again, I'll help you. I'll help the Mac users, and you get caught up since you came in late. Yes, ma'am.
On Monday, I think I recall.
If we were using, and that is a great question. My slides are a little confusing because if we're using straight image, they're JPEGs. When we swap to CImage, we swap to GIFs. And I don't think I spent enough time emphasizing that when I went through the lab. So great question. We are going to use GIFs because we're swapping over to CImage instead of image. Why? I don't know. I didn't write the original code, but GIFs work. And every time I say GIF, that means .gif. Okay, let's not bash Max, even though I agree with you, but let's not bash Max.
I'm just looking at this. We extracted it.
But now the image is right.
It's like they're not even like
Right,
lined up.
so just grab them, copy them, and paste them where you into the folder you want them in. I'm not a Mac user, but I will do everything in my power to help Mac users get everything sorted out. I'm not saying that Macs are bad, I just don't know. the Mac OS, and I have no interest in learning it. All right. Y'all want to write some code? Y'all ready to write some code? I got some yeses, I got some no's. The great thing about this and me giving you 2 weeks is if you don't understand what we're doing in class, you're gonna have a lot of time to come in or email me for one-on-one help. The in-person students are gonna have a lot of workshop time with me in the room with you. Online students are always welcome to email me, set up Google calls. In-person people can set up Google meetings, Zoom meetings, whatever platform you like best. I've used them all, I think, at this point for virtual meetings. I had a virtual meeting with a student in Germany last week. I can do this, not opposed to it. However, very, very few of you take me up on the offer to help you outside of class. CSX, I have told the coordinator for CSX that the students in there are allowed to help you with part 1 and part 2. They will not give you the answers, but they will help you create the answer and come to the right conclusions. And you don't believe me at this point, and I know I was in your seat many years ago, but I promise you, if you'll find a person, a pet, or a rubber ducky, and sit it down and talk to it about what you're trying to do, your brain will process the problem and you'll find a solution much quicker. The person does not have to know anything about coding. And actually, it's probably better if they don't, because they won't try to do it for you. Just look at them and say, just listen to me talk. You don't have to solve this problem, and talk to them. It's amazing how many times I walk up to your computers with you and ask you what you were trying to accomplish. And while you're telling me, you go, oh, I put blue instead of green here. Because when you're trying to explain it to somebody else, you have to look at your code more critically. Or you find the step that you thought you typed, but didn't. I relate this to like talking to my husband when I think I have told him something important, but I haven't actually told him, but I've convinced myself in my head that we already had the conversation. We've been married over 20 years. This happens a lot. I'm pushing 30 years, so we both laugh. Did we have this conversation, or was it one of those in my head things? Happens. All right, back to coding. You don't want to hear about my life. So the main's going to have very few commands in it. At this point, when we get further along and you're asking for user input stuff, that'll happen in main, maybe might happen in load the process, depends on how you write it. So let's see what our next step is in here. We want to add red, green, or blue color washing. I suggest very strongly that you get red working before you think about doing blue or green. Right? So I'm going to write red with you today in class. And then I'm going to say, okay, how would we do blue and how would we do green? So we're going to add a function called create washed image that will take an image and a color. So one function is going to do all 3 colors. But for right now, we're only going to write the code for red. The color will be a string. So it's looking for a word, right? And it will then create and return an image that is color washed that specific color. The only valid colors right now in this part are red, green, and blue. Part 2 adds some other colors, but right now we're just doing red, green, and blue. If you color wash the infinitywar.gif file that I gave you, it should look similar to the image here. I'm going to tell you that Word kind of changes it a little bit. So it might not look exactly, but it will look very similar. Notice you can still make out that those are people, even though they're at a red tint, right? It's very easy to get a solid red box when you write this. All right, so let's go write some code. You'll notice that in this project, I'm not giving you step-by-step how to do everything. I'm taking a little bit of your hand holding away from you. I'm glad one of you thinks that's exciting. So we're going to go in here and we're going to create a whole new function. You can put it at the top, you can put it in the middle, whatever, it doesn't matter. Obviously, I didn't write this code because the main is at the bottom. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to move it. It can stay there. But if it bothers you, you can move it to the top. That makes sense. I'm going to start writing at the top because that way y'all can see it in the back better as I type instead of me having to keep scrolling. So it tells me exactly what to call it. So I'm just going to go copy the name out of here. And I'm just going to go paste it in. I know it needs the image and it needs a color. How do I know that? Because it told me that it said so. Right? You got it straight? All right, so it says what to name it. It says what the parameters are going to be. So if we have this new image and we have this negate function, right? We can actually steal some stuff from our negate function. Right? Because we're going to do similar things. We still need a new image to copy it into. We are still going to need nested for loops to access every pixel. And then we need to change the colors of the pixels, right? So I'm going to do a little cheating here. I'm going to copy all of this because I know I need the new image, I need the nested loops, and I need to get the current pixel before I can do anything to it, right? So I know I need those lines. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to paste them in. And now, let me some space to work with. I've got a new image to work with. I've set it up to navigate the whole picture via columns and rows. I've created a variable to hold the pixel I'm working with. Now I just need to change that pixel to where it's predominantly red, or well, where the picture is predominantly red. So what do you think we're going to do? Your hands up? I don't hear from you much. What do you think we're going to do?
We're gonna take the value that would become negative.
Maybe. So what he said is we're going to go back to negative and do some copying. He's right. We probably are going to copy because I don't like typing code over how happens. But we're going to change the values of red, green, and blue. How are we going to change? Okay. Okay, so his suggestion, and it sounds like might be a decent one. I'm not going to judge it one way or the other, but it's logical. A logical suggestion is to get the red, green, and blue, set red to max, and the other two to 0. Is that what you're saying? Okay, let's try it. See what happens. So I'm going back down to negate, and I'm gonna copy this. Well, I'm pretty much gonna copy the whole thing. Let's be honest about it. Let's just go ahead and copy the rest of it and paste it in here. But we're gonna make some changes. We're gonna keep red at the highest value, which is 255. We're going to set green to the lowest value. Numlock's not on, which is 0. And blue to the lowest value, which is also 0. Right? Is that what you were thinking? All right. This makes decent amount of sense. So let's go in here, and instead of doing these 2 lines, I'm going to comment them out for the time being, because I already know negative works. I'm going to do, oops, nope, undo. I'm going to do create washed image. Sorry, I forgot to set it equal to a variable. And then I want to do red image dot draw. Does that make sense? So I'm going to set it, I'm going to create a new image variable, call my function. Now, one thing I would like to point out is our function doesn't actually use the red yet, because we haven't addressed that parameter yet, but that's okay. We're doing this in little bitty pieces. We haven't given it a choice of what color. It's, yeah, I'm gonna go back. So we have color here that we haven't used anywhere, but that's because we're not giving this function a choice yet. Does that make sense? I have deprived the function of its free will. Yes, I have. I'm only in charge in one place in my life, and that's inside of this classroom. So we're just going to go with I'm in charge. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to run this real quick and see what happens. Oops. Invalid syntax. I put a space in here. Sorry. So, okay, we did change it, and we got a whole lot of red, but we didn't keep any of the picture details. And we honestly, this is exactly what I was hoping would happen. So thank you for playing into my hopes and dreams today. This is really where a lot of people start. They're like, oh, well, I'm just gonna keep the red, I'm gonna get rid of everything else. Well, if you do that, you just make every pixel solid red. So let's rehash our algorithm and think of a way that we can make this better. So what we probably should think about, okay, is instead of making it the maximum red, what could we do to give it different shapes? Yes, sir.
Whenever you get the pixel, you take the red and green and blue value, and I would say cut both the red and green and blue values in half and double the red value, making sure it doesn't go over to 255.
Too complex. It's a nice theory, and it's probably closer. It's probably closer to accurate on a true filter, but that's too complex an algorithm for what our purposes are. So what he said, if you didn't hear him, was take all the values, like double the red, half the other two, you know, come up with like a percentage, I guess, of the other colors to keep. And probably if you were really building a filter for your Instagram account, that would be probably what you would do, because it would be more realistic. But we're going to oversimplify this. So what if we just keep the red and get rid of the blue and the green? No. If you keep the value, that you already have. Sorry, not the image, the pixel. If we take the red value that's already in the pixel and we leave it the same, but we remove the blue and the green from it, we do actually get different shades of red, including it up to black, because if there's no red in the pixel, I mean, if there's all the red in the pixel, it goes towards black. If there's no red in the pixel, it goes towards white, because the other two are zeros, right? So if we run it now with that small change, it tints it red. Does that make sense? Now, it's really red. If we were building filters and wanted it to have a red tint, we probably honestly want something more complex, like you were saying. But since we are being very simplistic here, we're just going to go with full on red. It's going to be really red. It's not really washed red. It is red, right? So we did that, and it seems to work. So how would we do blue and green? Same thing. But since we need this function to make a choice, what do you suggest we add if our function needs to make a decision? An if statement. So now inside of my code, or inside of my nested loops, I need an if statement, right? If color equals the bad thing about copying from another folder is it messes up all your ifs. So I'm going to put an if, else if clause in here, right? And I'm just going to keep adding them. So right now, I only have 3 colors, so I'll have 3 branches to my if. But when we get finished, there's going to be a lot of branches to my ifs, right? Because we're going to go add, in part 2, we're going to add magenta, cyan, and yellow. Yes. And this is where the copy paste errors are going to come into play for you, because you got to make sure that you change the right things. So we're doing blue, so right. So I'm going to strongly suggest you guys do this. I've changed it for blue. I'm going to go test it again before I type green, because I see a lot of you guys asking me questions where you have a whole lot of code written that you haven't tested yet. So I'm going to go back down here to load and process. I'm going to change red to blue. And I'm going to run it. And I have a very dark blue picture. There was a lot of blue in that original picture. Right? Now I could swap it up and do a different picture. But if let's see. I go for the ones that have short names. Still blue, right?
Can you give that to your post? Oh, absolutely. Great, thank you.
I absolutely am going to give you access to this code one more time. All right, so back to the code. So we have an if statement that does, if it's red, we're gonna do this. If it's blue, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna let you copy and paste and get green working real quick, all on your own. How long does it take y'all to copy and paste and edit? Apparently a long time. Good to know. So, questions? Anybody just completely and utterly lost? All right, yes, ma'am. Louder. Syntax errors. Okay, I'm gonna come look at syntax errors. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes or so to type this or copy and paste this and fix it, and I'm gonna come around and check a couple of syntax errors. That's it. What's that? And then I think because I'm doing things, I'm gonna be wrong. Oh, okay.
License to.
Why? Well, that we could just put part on. Unfortunately, I hate Python because I want to say it's a project. All right. Where did all here? Nope. Wrong with the index? It's literally right. That I was having the issue too. So I think my if was messed up, my first if, and then I had to go back and write all of them. But I don't know. Wait, wait? It should be lined up with pixels. Okay, it was. Okay, well, no, it wasn't. It looks tacky. What? Why? I get it. It's still not working. Your match. Yeah, it just refuses to work.
If you have an indent problem, you're probably off by one space because the stuff we gave you didn't use standard tabs. What's your problem?
Okay, so. Okay, got my green.
No.
I don't have any difference. Here we go. Ha. So what I did was- Do we have to make it in? Oh, yeah. You will, and like
Oh,
what?
wait.
Yeah. She read it.
Make it go over one space.
And they just go.
Yes. Oh, sir.
Alright. Indents are off. You may have to go through one space, one line of comments are on it. Yeah. Okay, so it's not fine. So you have your folder.
Or when you got a Walmart, I buy that.
It's in the gay part.
That's when you.
And then you adjust it earlier.
No, I'm.
Yeah.
I'm ready for them to. They'll make money.
Yeah, they extract it.
Better, computer, I could have gotten. Like another video.
Allie, we're gonna be like, just factor out the first part of the equation.
You know what?
Never seen anybody do that.
No,
No, okay, so I was-
The answers are in the book.
Oh, you're here to go. I was tutoring this girl for the IB class, but she took algebra like early on school, so she didn't really know it. And I literally had to go right out, but she did, the voting yard was going back. And I still remember it.
Or you get out or her mind.
Yeah, it's like, it's so wrong that like, I have never seen anything so terrible. I literally told her, that's how algebra works.
Alright, those of you that have this working, please get up and go help somebody.
You did, you helped me.
You help me. Did you?
You
Help me get them. You know how like I asked you a question. I did the opposite of what you said. You served others. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, I was talking about you specifically.
Okay, she was just like, I don't like that you're right there.
You write your functions, it doesn't matter, you want to write the functions and when you call
Next one.
No.
I'm like it.
Yeah.
All right,
y'all working?
she is.
I'm coming. You know how to set up files, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's having a file problem. Can you help me? We have quite a few that have file problems. You too, if you
Some
feel
file
like you. If you're getting errors that say can't find file or image or something, raise your hand and one of the people that have got this working, or I will come around and help you.
It's just.
They're very-
Because I got it working, but do I have? to-
Where you going?
Do I just?
You can just change the
Yeah.
color.
Like,
no. This is test, you can.
That's what I was pointing at.
I didn't see it.
How you test it is completely up to you. And get you caught up. All right. All right, so I have learned a valuable lesson today. Max hate extracting images. It's okay. We will get you straight. So everybody got red, green, and blue working unless you have an image file problem. If you have an image or a file location problem, stick around. I'm going to help you out some more. Let's check real quick and see what else is left in part 1. So the next thing we have to do is add some functionality so the program will prompt the user for the name of the image file they would like to use. So here's an example of text that should be thrown up on the screen for the user and what their answer is. This functionality it does not tell you where to add this functionality. You have some choices here. You can do it in 2 places. You can do it in load and process, or you can do it in main. But if you do it in main, you can do it both places. It doesn't matter. If you do it in main, you pass in whatever the answer is to load and process. And you have to pass in the color. You do it in functionality. Do it in create image, then it's a little less information passing. Probably would be cleaner to do it in load process. But I'm not going to tell you you can't do it in main because it is definitely possible. You just will have more more parameters pass if you do it in the main. All right. If you think you can handle this on your own, feel free to get. If not, I'm going to stick around and answer a few more questions. I really think you guys should be able to handle input statements at this point on your own. I'm going to strongly encourage you to do it in load and process just to cut down on the confusion. Does that make sense? All right, if you are satisfied with your red, green, and blue, please feel free to go ahead and go grab some breakfast for your next class. If you're still having problems, stay seated and I will come and help you.